In general terms, model binding is the process of converting incoming request data into action method parameters. This is one of the most important concepts to understand in MVC in terms of working with data, so let's make sure we have a strong understanding of how this process works. As we discussed previously, when a URL is routed to MVC, a controller is initialized to handle the request. The controller's action invoker then selects which action method should generate the response. Before the invoker executes that method, however, it checks to see if there are any parameters that need to be populated. If there are, the action invoker uses a component called the model binder to supply values for those parameters. The action method can only execute and generate a response if the parameters are either populated or set to null for nullable types, otherwise an error will be thrown. In order to populate action method parameters, the model binder in turn relies on value providers, which are classes that supply different data from different sources. By default, MVC comes with 4 value providers registered for use, which provide access to posted form values, route data, the query string, and any posted files. Value providers are utilized in the order that they're registered, so if a match is found from one source, the later ones are never utilized for the current request. So in this example, the form value provider could not locate a match for the ID parameter name, but the route data provider did. This means that the query string and file value providers will never be utilized for this request. One of the powerful features of the model binder is that it understands how to bind complex types in addition to simple types like integers. For example, if we were to submit the create task form in our application, the form value provider would collect all of the posted key value pairs from the request body and make those available to the binder. The model binder then uses reflection to traverse the properties of the action method parameter class and match them up to values in the form value provider. This implies that the naming of your HTML fields is very important, and this is where Razor HTML helpers can be very useful. They will make sure the names of your HTML form fields match the C# property names that they're supposed to bind to. From a technical perspective, model binders are implemented through an interface called iModelBinder. This interface only defines one method called bindModel. The default model binder implements this interface and handles many concerns for you behind the scenes, so it's somewhat uncommon to completely replace it with your own. It's often easier to inherit and just extend the default model binder to tweak its behavior. Value providers are also implemented through an interface called iValueProvider. Writing custom value providers is also a fairly uncommon task, but this extension point can be extremely useful in specific situations where you need to supply the model binder with data from another source. So now that we understand how model binding works in MVC conceptually, let's start to shift our focus to the create task form in our application. In the next lesson, let's start by discussing the overall model and data structure that will be required by our form.